Jake, do you worry about any other running backs who might not be able to take big loads?
No.
Mayo experience.
Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience presented by Underdog. Get this, code Mayo will not only get you a free pick in the Pick'em game, but it'll also get you a deposit bonus of up to $1,000. Waste it all away in best ball drafts, or maybe win one or two or three of the $22 million guaranteed up for grabs on Underdog this fantasy football season. Big show today. It's the rankings for season-long fantasy football. Running backs, we're starting here. We're going to go through each of the positions week by week to get you prepped for what you need to know. And to do that, I had to bring in the best in the biz. From theathletic.com, Jake Ciely. From Fantasy Life, Ian Hartitz. Fellas, we're back for version 2 of this. We're going to do a sleeper show next week. I got to ask you this, Jake. I think we've covered this in other years. Do sleepers actually exist in fantasy football anymore, or is it just undervalued guys?
It is undervalued, guys, but the term is we can't get away from it because of SEO, and when we have to chase, nobody's out there typing in top 10 undervalued discounts I can get later in my draft to return value. Now, like, it's just the sleepers term is unfortunately what we're stuck with probably forever.
Well, I'm not really that bummed about that, Ian. I saw your sleeper list. I'm pretty fired up about your sleeper list, but that's next week. We're here to talk about running backs. When it comes to running backs this year, what are you seeing at the top of the board? Because last year, if you ended up with the stud running backs, you did pretty well in your leagues if you hit on the right guys. So where do you think that these guys are actually going? Like, would you make a running back the first overall pick?
I think it's reasonable, especially if you are in half PPR, God forbid, a standard league in the year 2025. Also got to keep in mind, do you have 3 wide receiver starting spots or just 2? So a lot can certainly go into it. But hey, man, I do think, especially if you are drafting over at Underdog, shout out to the real ones. But man, such a wide receiver thirsty room still. So man, the way that you can get 3 or 4 just complete 3 down potential studs in the first 8 rounds, man, I've been happy to go RB heavy again.
Yeah, would you be thinking the same thing, Jake, at the start of your season-long draft? I'm not too concerned about best ball because that's not what this show is about. That, lock up your Saquon. If he's not going number 1, good news.
Yeah, I think that's the way I've always been, and I'm pretty much going to stay leaning into that. Is I want one in the first 2 rounds, but if the draft is falling to me, and all of a sudden we're already talking about Josh Jacobs, which I like, but Josh Jacobs, Irving, or something like that at the end of the first round because people are going running back heavy, and I'm at the back half of the first round. Doesn't mean I'm going to reach on one just to get one. So I could see ending up with 2 or 3 wide receivers to start, but I would like to, especially because as we get through these rankings today, you're going to see there's a lot of backfields because of this rookie draft class where we're already like, oh, who's actually the lead? Who's actually going to get 60%? Is there going to be 60%? So I know there's a lot of names, but to what Ian was saying, and as we'll get through this, is even if you start wide receivers, there's going to be a lot of potential, not 0 RB, but kind of like that 0 RB type of build this year.
I can see it, and I think that if the draft dictates it, that's the way that you go. We'll have more strategy type discussions the closer that we get to actual drafts once we see how everything is materializing. But let's get to the rankings. That's why people are here. Running back rankings, half point PPR for 2025. You guys are not aligned at the very top of the rankings. Jake, you have Bijan as number 1.
Boo.
Ian, you have Saquon as number 2. Now you have them 2 and 1 on the opposite list as well. Are these 2 the clear cut above, or would you guys throw in Gibbs? And I see that we have the ADP in the middle, so it's being drafted as Bijan, Barkley, Gibbs, Jeanty, McCaffrey, top 5, then Henry, A-Chain, Jonathan Taylor, Bucky Irving. And we have a few Bucky Irving notes here with the Wirfs problem that came out a few days ago. And then Josh Jacobs at number 10. Like, where do you guys see the cutoff in terms of what the tier of running back is?
Big 3. I would, if you want to take Gibbs first. Gibbs was actually the highest scorer, just the difference of points per game in the entire season last year for everybody coming for Saquon Barkley. And I heard Ian say boo, and I'm definitely, I have him at 2, so I'm not worried about the 370 touches. Hey, the breaking news, everybody, somebody coming off their career year might have a little bit of a decrease the second season behind it. Like,
hey, you're not leaving the potential for people to have an even bigger career year.
Which is certainly possible, but I think a season like Barkley is why everybody's coming for him. But I find this interesting. I know we're not talking about him now, but why I have an okay. If you want Barkley first, no problem with it. I like a little bit of what the Falcons have been talking about and the changes with Zach Robinson, and that they're going to lean into the run even more, and that it could actually swing in Bijan's direction. I'm buying into it a little bit. I mean, I went by my projections to break them apart, and they're only a 4-point gap. Like, I was going to be fine if Barkley was 1 and Bijan was 2, but that was the difference. Is I just let my projections give me those big 3. All that being said, is everybody's like, oh, Derrick Henry is going to be fine again because he's Derrick Henry and all. But Derrick Henry is just coming off yet another season when he's been healthy, 3 of the seasons in a row of over 300 touches. And everybody's like, he's fine because he's a freak of nature. But Saquon Barkley's going to die this year, apparently.
Where are you hearing people say this?
It's all over the place. It's all over. It's so annoying. It's the curse of 364 touches, but you can't include, postseason ones. Like, people I actually think would be more in on Saquon if he had gotten hurt against the Rams in the divisional round and not been able to go over 400 touches. So, look, I tried to run some of the numbers on this. You look at it since 2010, the amount of running backs with the 400-plus touches. Median games played the next year has still been 15. The average has been 12.7, okay? But sometimes we have some bad faith characters out there, maybe including Le'Veon Bell's holdout year in this, or when Ezekiel Elliott got suspended, and then really just, skewing the numbers. So, look, I think Bijan does have, the superior pass game floor to Saquon Barkley and everything, and that's fair and fine. If you want to lean on that, I'm not going to disagree. But I mean, Jake, I feel like if you are fully going in on the Saquon's just going to get hurt narrative because he got hurt, what are people doing ranking him RB2, RB3? If Saquon's just going to get hurt, get him out of your top 10.
That's exactly where I was coming from with this. Even looking at the ADP, he's going number 2, like a half pick behind. It's basically a coin flip of who the first running back going is. So is there 7 people who show up to a draft of 12, Jake, and are just like, no Saquon for me, he sucks. And everyone else is like, no, I'll take that guy. He's good.
Yeah, that's basically what happened yesterday. I did an early mock draft with Jamie Eisenberg and the CBS crew, and I had the 10th pick. Guess who I got at the 10th pick? Saquon Barkley. And I couldn't click it fast enough. Like, there are drafts where you're going to find it. There was Christian McCaffrey that went in front of him and Derrick Henry that went in front of him. I would never do that. And I have Christian McCaffrey at 4, and I would never do that. I think it just depends on who you're with. But as Ian said, when you asked us who's saying that, it's like everybody. It's weird. I get what you're saying. It's like everybody wants to say, I don't want to take that risk in the first round. And yet most are still sitting in the first round being like, well, that's stupid. I know I can say that on the side, but when it comes to draft time, I'm still going to do it anyway.
So you both have Jahmyr Gibbs at number 3. And we saw when Montgomery went out towards the end of the year, Ian, that he was just absolutely electric. Like, if you had Jahmyr Gibbs, you basically won your fantasy championship. What do you think this looks like with Montgomery coming back, new offensive coordinator? Is this where the lean ends up going to Gibbs 70-30, or do you still think this is going to be one of those things where, hey, Gibbs ended up with his 18 touches, but Montgomery got every touch from the 1-yard line?
Hey, I mean, Lions obviously, reigning top 3 straight years of top 5 scoring offense. Even if we'd always prefer if our, RB1 in fantasy got all the touches, what they're doing is working just fine in real life. But even before that Demon injury down the stretch, we still saw Gibbs working as the RB5 in PPR points per game. So it's one of these situations where his floor is as a mid-tier RB1, and the ceiling, as we saw, is literally game breaker overall RB1 in all of fantasy. So I do think with the change in OC, with Demon getting a year older, maybe we do see the backfield shift a little bit more towards Gibbs. That said, Jake, I know that just historically when we see guys, have these higher yards per carry and just the, advanced efficiency metrics that get, fantasy analysts all excited and everything, it doesn't always lead to an increase in usage next year. Otherwise, Jalen Warren would have 400 touches per season by now. So again, I'm hopeful for Gibbs to get a little bit more, but for me, that is why it actually is a little bit more of a tier break after Saquon and Bijan, because there are going to be these unfortunate weeks where Montgomery or the passing game gets things going in their own right. And hey, maybe it is possible that the Lions take a slight step back given some of the issues moving on from Ben Johnson. So Gibbs still very much in there as the RB3, but I think this is the point where I do start to take maybe the Jamar Chases, the CeeDee Lambs of the world, in addition to the first 2 running backs, because, hey, unfortunately, the year 2025, guys need the football to score fantasy points.
Well, Ian, do you have Gibbs closer to A-Chain, who you have next, or do you have him closer to Bijan?
Same tier. I think RBs 3 through honestly 7, 8 are kind of not interchangeable necessarily, but Ashton Jeanty is someone I've had as high up as RB3 at different points in the offseason. That one just kind of came down to, I know we'll get to him in a bit, but just more of the offensive scoring upside there. So for me, Achane and Gibbs, very similar players. They're going to dominate in the passing game. They got that one hitter, quitter, provocative home run ability. So for me, Achane back-to-back, top 5 seasons in his own right, very much in that same conversation as Gibbs.
So you have HN at number 4, Ian. Jake, you have him at number 6. Now, obviously, that's really splitting hairs. But at the beginning of drafts, it means you're either getting him or you're not. It's not like having one guy RB 27 and then Ian has him at RB 30. You can both theoretically get that guy whenever you really want to take him. You could be higher than the field on him, lower than the field. But when we're talking about the top 10 running backs, you're going to have one chance to take these guys. And for me, it seems like you wouldn't end up with a lot of HN because of your ranking.
No, actually, I've still ended up with some of them mostly because I'm so down. I put that in quotes, down on Jeanty. Jeanty's the one that actually skews everybody because I have him down at 9, which is 4 or 5 off of ADP or consensus or whatever you want to look at, which makes HN right in line. So I've gotten some of it. I'm not going to get a ton of them, but it's basically in line with Henry, HN, Jacobs, Taylor, like all those are kind of close to theirs because Jeanty's pushing them all up by one spot, which offsets that slight difference. So I've been able to get a few of them. My tier is a little bit different than Ian's, but similar range. It's like I start at 4. We'd already talked about Gibbs, but I start at 4 with McCaffrey and go down to Irving at 10. So that's my tier is a little bit different. So as you said, splitting hairs. We're also splitting hairs on the whole Gibbs situation. But I have gotten some HM because of that.
It's interesting. Yeah, your tier 2 is absolutely gigantic here. So you said your tier 2, Ian, would be basically from A-Chain down to Jacobs. Like, would the cutoff be Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs, Kyron Williams? Like, where are you going with that?
Probably Taylor there. That's the point where I'm just like after him with Jacobs. Obviously, Marshawn Lloyd coming back. Old enough to remember when Matt LaFleur was splitting carries between Derrick Henry and Dion Lewis. So Jacobs actually did run a little bit pure last year in terms of just having all of his backfield competition get hurt. Mentioned Lloyd. Even A.J. Dillon had that neck injury, was out for the year. I know you at home might be saying, why are you bringing up A.J. Dillon? Matt LaFleur gave A.J. Dillon 200-plus touches in 3 consecutive seasons, even though he had a guy by the name of Aaron Jones there who was obviously doing far more with his opportunities. So, again, just enough concern with Jacobs to keep him out of that tier. And then with Bucky Irving, it's a situation where we watched Liam Cohen really see this dude be better than Rachaad White for the entire season, only to not give him the full-time starting job until that fourth quarter fumble that White had against the Cowboys all the way in Week 16. So, yes, Bucky is awesome, but, man, when I start looking at it, is Bucky Irving just so much more awesome that Jonathan Taylor can rack up 100 more touches and we still want to be going with Bucky? Those are the bets I'm not really trying to take. So again, every single running back that we have ranked in the top 10 or top 12 is incredibly talented. So when we have guys like Bucky, have guys like Jeanty, where the argument I'm kind of hearing why we should prioritize them is just, yeah, look how talented they are. All these guys are great. I want to lean more towards the higher touch loads and hopefully an offenses that are the best.
What do you make? So you have Irving at number 10, Jake, and Ian, you have him at number 11. You gave me these ranks before the news of Tristan Wirfs and his knee injury came out. He's probably going to start the year on the PUP list. Obviously, he's their best offensive lineman. Does that worry you at all? Even if he does end up getting back to full strength, does that mean a slower start potentially for Irving?
Yeah, if we were doing the rankings right now, I just sent them to you. I'd probably slide Irving back 2 spots and knock him out of this tier. Then it would be Kyron Williams, Kenneth Walker, and then Irving, just because, and I know we're going to talk about Kenneth Walker here in a little bit, but that risk is there. And I know we're also more concerned, worse in the passing game, one of the best blindside left tackles in the game, but you just have to acknowledge the fact of what it could do to the entire offensive line. And one of the best tackles in the game, period. And they sound like, I know it's arthroscopic, but it just happened. And they're like, well, hopefully it's the first few weeks. That sounds pretty optimistic to say, hopefully the first few weeks. And he's 100% by week 3 or 4 through September. And then what if they're just a little bit more cautious because it is one of the best in the game? It's kind of a franchise player that we're talking about for them, for the Buccaneers. So like, do they take the cautious approach and say, hey, this is more about just week 5. And all of a sudden it's week 6 or 7 before he's back to 100%. Just, it kind of what Ian's bringing up here point wise is that like we're talking about, well, the reason I have this tier and being a little bit different and bigger is because I see risk with every single one of those players, but I think it's minimal risk. I think this is enough to say Irving, and I acknowledge what Ian's saying. There was some risk that there's a little bit more of a split now that Cohen is also gone. But that added situation with Wirfs would knock him out of this tier for me.
How about you, Ian? Would you bump him down?
It's not ideal, but I think we're finding something to really freak out about in the middle of July at the end of the day here. Tristan Wirfs is awesome. No one's denying that. But you would think the way we're talking about this, oh, man, the Bucs even scored a single point in the one game he missed last year. No, they scored 30 points. Baker got sacked 0 times. Bucky had over 150 yards and a touchdown against the Giants. So, again, we saw the 49ers, 2 years ago when Trent Williams was out of the picture, couldn't crack 17 points. Last year, Brock Purdy actually still was one of the more efficient quarterbacks in the NFL, despite the services of one of the best left tackles in the league. So, I don't know, man. This feels to me like something that we're waiting more so just for Bucky. It's not like we talk about Achane and just how bad his offensive line is, even though the Buccaneers' offensive line is probably still better despite, Wirfs being out for 4 weeks to probably start the season. So again, not ideal, but to me, this just feels like people maybe getting wet feet. If you were in on Bucky and now you're just completely out because we have a lineman missing a couple games in September, where are all the people that are playing for December in the first place anyway? So again, Bucky, not someone I've been going too hard in the paint for to begin with. That's why I have him ranked RB11 or whatever it is right now. But again, I just think we're maybe freaking out a little bit too much in July.
Wait. How is 2 spots freaking out? I'm like, I'm done.
Panic.
I'm killing
Panic
Bucky
mode
Irving.
Jake Ciely is what they're going to call
Two
you.
spots.
Yeah,
I
2
think,
spots.
listen, I think that what you said is true. Like, yes, you have to be playing for the championship. But at the same time, when you're drafting Bucky Irving in the 12th round a year ago, hoping that he's good and he can help you by the end of the year, that's one thing. When you're making him a fringe mid-round, second round pick towards the end of the second round, that guy needs to carry you through the season.
Jake, how much did you change your projections for Tristan Wirfs potentially missing the first 4 weeks?
He legitimately went from in front of, I'm looking at it right now, he went from in front of Ashton Jeanty to behind Ashton Jeanty. He dropped 1 spot. But again, I'm pulling up Kenneth Walker, which is a conversation we're about to have in probably a minute or two. But Baker Mayfield, he actually didn't even move at quarterback. He lost about 6 fantasy points on the entire season. That's my point. Is I am agreeing with you. Don't go crazy. But if we're going to talk about acknowledging, and again, part of it is I have a different tier than you. I had Irving as I was putting Irving in with Jeanty and Taylor and Jacobs and stuff like that.
That was ill-advised.
That was ill-advised. I would associate a little bit more risk just to say, okay, now it's the Kyron, Kenneth Walker, Chase Brown tier. It's just a very small. So I agree with you. Don't knock them all the way down to 18, but 2 spots doesn't feel like we're going crazy.
That's fair.
Have you guys heard this rumor floating that Najee Harris lost his eye in a fireworks accident and they're not reporting it yet?
What?
No.
I've heard
was he hanging out with Jason Pierre-Paul or something?
Maybe not only is this just a Reddit thing. I have a Chargers insider who people on the show may know, and he was panicked about it.
Oh my God.
Not panicked. He's like, this is a real thing that happened.
Wow. So are we going to talk about Omarion Hampton being top 12 now?
Well, Jake, how do your projections change if Najee Harris is supposed to play with 1 eye?
He has to play with a pirate badge.
Well, it's funny. It's funny that you see some surrounding news to this as well, because I've already seen reports coming out. It's Najee Harris may not make the team, and that's because it's not just Omarion Hampton. They got Rocket Raheem Sanders in the backfield too, who everyone's super high on. It just sounds like they're putting out stuff right now. I'm taking this seriously. Now, maybe it comes out to be completely phony, but for the time being, let's pretend Najee Harris doesn't exist. How high up would you move Stomp the Yard here?
Oh, man. I put him ahead of Bucky. I think
wait, Ian's just ignoring the Omarion joke there. That was a good one.
Listen, you don't have to sell every single joke, Jake. I appreciate that you do. If we're gonna run this dynamic, you're actually the no seller. Someone needs to be Brock Lesnar out there.
Go ahead.
That flew right over my head. I'm sorry. I got to watch more Stomp the Yard, I guess. I haven't been grinding the tape like you guys. But, man, I think Hampton gets into the top 10 pretty much immediately at that point. We already know this is an offense that can score in the top 10 with Justin Herbert. We know Greg Roman and Harbaugh want to run the piss out of the football. So, man, you take Najee Harris out of the picture, just like if you would take Omarion Hampton out of the picture. This is almost like a middle-class man's version, I think, of the Detroit Lions backfield. Although in this case, maybe we're even a bit more confident that either of these guys can't handle the load. So, Najee, again, if he's out of the picture, that is going to make things more clear. But I do think that assuming everything went okay on July 4th in the Harris family, don't sleep on this dude turn this into a bit more of a split committee. We actually mentioned Dave Montgomery earlier. Don't look now, guys, but the numbers through the first 4 seasons of the career between Najee and Demont, Najee's better in pretty much everything, okay? It hasn't exactly been this world-class situation in Pittsburgh that he's been in. This is still a big running back, doesn't miss any time, and is capable of working across all 3 downs. So, again, Hampton deserves to be ranked higher and everything, but I think this could be a nuisance. And, Jake, I mean, I don't know about you where you have Hampton ranked, but for me, it's a situation where I want to be high-ish on the guy, low end, RB2, I think is very fair. I have him RB19 right now, but man, some of these drafts, seeing him up there, RB15 next to the Chase Browns, Kenneth Walkers, James Cooks of the world, haven't been getting a ton of Hampton this offseason.
Jake, do you worry about any other running backs who might not be able to take big loads?
No, I don't. I'm not grinding the bathroom, Dave. There, Pat Mayo.
It doesn't need to be in the bathroom. It could be anywhere. As long as you don't believe in laws, everything's good to go. So
I was where
would
go under?
You have him at number 21 in your running back. He's Omarion right now. Would you move him to the Jeanty tier ahead of Bucky Irving, Kyron Williams? Like, would that be where he is?
I would actually immediately slide him into 10, mostly because similar to last year when you and I talked, similar to Emory Hunt back then too, as well as I was very much on the Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, almost no gap between them. And I think that Jeanty and Hampton are a little bit more of a gap, but still the sliver of a gap where they should have been talked more about in a similar conversation in the town. I would still take Jeanty every single time, but we're not talking about rating 1 to 10 and 1 to 7. This is like 10 and a 9.5 to me. So I think that he immediately slides up. I will say I was doing news research while you said this, and apparently he was also at a camp recently hosted for kids. So I don't know if that camp happened before or after July 4th. The news only came out on July 7th. So he might be okay. But point being is that even if you want to do this now for Marion Hampton and you want to slide him up a few spots just on the fact that we all expect, injury or not, like whatever this Najee Harris situation is, at some point, I think everybody out there believes Marion Hampton is going to take the bell cow, and I put that in quotes, work of this backfield at some point. It just might take a few weeks to get there.
Let's see. Now, there's people out here asking real questions. Twitter user Dean Thanos says, have you considered the fact that Najee hasn't posted an Instagram at all because he has no eyes?
Let's just spend the rest of the show debating on if Najee really still
just
has
keep doing more deep dives on Najee Harris. Has anybody seen it? Like, I'm watching this news clip and he's out there with the kids doing the little drills and everything like that. He's using both eyes, nothing on his face.
He wears a visor anyway. Who's to say he hasn't had one eye this entire time?
That's also a good point.
You see, I didn't. Maybe he's like Columbo, and we just didn't know unless you look really hard at it.
Eye patch would go kind of hard. I'm not going to lie. On the football field, I don't think anyone's ever done that.
Yeah. Let's move on to. we'll keep you updated because no real news outlets are reporting this. It's just something I keep seeing come across where you guys are seeing people saying I don't want to draft Saquon Barkley. I'm seeing Najee Harris ain't got no eyes anymore. That's what my timeline is feeding me. Feeling stuck in your daily wellness routine? When you're not alone. Our friends at Cornbread Hemp, they heard you. Their organic CBD gummies are made to help you feel better, whether it's stress and poor sleep or just needing a moment to unwind. Personally, I started taking them before a round of golf because I've been dealing with this tennis elbow issue. It's starting to go away, but it tightens up on me throughout the course of the round. So just when I pop a Cornbread Hemp CBD gummy, all of a sudden loosen right up, playing a lot better. Highly recommended if your muscles seize up or get tight during a round of golf. CBD might be just what you need to level up your daily routine. Cornbread Hemp uses only the best parts of hemp plant, the flower, for purest and the most potent CBD. No fillers, no junk, just full spectrum goodness. Right now, they're offering 30% off your first order. So go to cornbreadhemp.com/PatMayo and use code PatMayo at checkout. That's cornbreadhemp.com/PatMayo with code PatMayo to get 30% off your first order. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Part of my wellness routine this year, at least in the summer, has been focus more on family and focus more on Pat Mayo. So, been doing fewer shows, upping the exercise, eating better, and a lot of people don't have the privilege and luxury that I do to be able to take time off like that, especially during the summer when stuff can start to stress you out. If you have kids, there is no summer for you. It's just daily, nonstop grinding every single day. Couple that with workplace stress and It's a bit difficult. Workplace stress right now is one of the top causes of declining mental health, with 61% of the global workforce experiencing a higher than normal amount of stress. So maybe BetterHelp is exactly what you need to do. It's helpful for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. It isn't just for those who've experienced major trauma. If you feel anything going on with you, you need to go to betterhelp.com/PatMayo right now. With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served over 5 million people globally. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Unwind from work with BetterHelp. My listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/PatMayo. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/PatMayo. Even though the 4th of July is in the rearview mirror, there's still a massive opportunity to get some Omaha steaks, get outside, have a cookout, and I'm going to make that easy for you, because if you go to omahasteaks.com right now, you can get 50% off site-wide, plus my listeners are going to get an extra $45 off with promo code MAYO at checkout. There's no better thing to do in the summer. You have the family over, you have the friends over, you're having some drinks, the kids are playing in the yard, you're spraying a hose at them like that creepy guy in Billy Madison, and you have luscious steaks on the grill. And it doesn't even need to be steaks. It could be anything that you want, because Omaha Steaks has it done for you. They also carry mouth-watering burgers, chicken, pork, seafood, and delectable desserts. So get fired up this year, this summer, with Omaha Steaks, and visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide and get an extra $45 off by using promo code MAYO at checkout. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $45 off with promo code MAYO at checkout. See site for details. But you had Kenneth Walker news and an update here, Jake. What is it about Kenneth Walker that has you so intrigued?
Yeah, so like everybody, I've seen a lot of people talking about the change with the offensive system and the outside zone and how good Kenneth Walker has been. And my pushback on that was that it's not like Charbonnet
he has 2 eyes, and that just bumped him up.
That's it. Well, maybe 3, because a third. There you go. He's got that. What's that all-seeing eye?
He stole Najee Harris's eye. Put it on like the man with 2 hearts. Yeah, we tried to get it back from him, but he overpowered us.
Clearly. So anyway, point being, is that I was of the like that Charbonnet did enough back in the backfield last year to be involved, and he's not a slouch. Like, this is one of those things where, like, look how good Kenneth Walker is on the outside zone, and then nobody would follow it up with Charbonnet was also good. Charbonnet is better between the tackles and kind of actually even a little bit better in the man blocking scheme. But all that being said, he's still good. It's just that Kenneth Walker was that much better. And then I went further with it. I was like, you know what? Well, let me go to the source. And I went to Michael Sean Dugar of The Athletic, who covers the Seahawks, who's very much respected as one of the better Seahawks beat writers out there. And I said, look, you've been close to this team. You've been following the entire offseason. You know the coaching change with Kubiak. Is it more likely to be the split, given what Charbonnet just happened last year? Or are we probably leaning back to Kenneth Walker before he got hurt? And it wasn't even like he didn't even go down that route. He just sent back these 3 K9 bell cow. And I'm like, boom, done. Okay, that's all I need to know. I moved him up and I moved his workload up because I originally had him more of like a 58 to 42 type of split. But now by that change and my projections alone, Kenneth Walker getting 250 carries, which still might be underselling him given what that report was from Sean Dugar. He checks in now RB12 for me. I originally had him down by RB19, 20.
So that puts him 1 spot ahead of Chase Brown for you?
Yes. Well, yes.
Okay.
With the Bucky Irving news, I would put him one in front of Bucky Irving. I actually even feel better about that now.
But not Omarion Hampton with 2 eyes.
No, or 3.
Or 5. Just he'll have complete 360 vision.
The Thanos of eyes.
Yeah, he'll be like the cameras actually at the goal line during the Super Bowl. You can get every angle possible. What do you make of this, Ian? Do you think that it is worthy to bump him up, or do you see this as Jake's inside sources just being the same thing as, hey, we need news in July, let's talk about something?
Let me finish this Najee eye patch Photoshop real quick. But okay, now with Kenneth Walker, I've had him RB12. That's actually awesome to hear from Jake because that has been the one concern. But I just think, again, the way it was more so Mike McDonald talking about Kenneth throughout last season and the workload we ultimately saw him get, not only as a rusher, but as a pass catcher, man. Like, that was the big question for this dude ever since he came out of Michigan State. Can he actually rack up, receiving yards? And he ended up with, I believe, the 7th most fantasy points per game from just receiving production. So with Walker, I understand the advanced stats, don't paint the best picture in the world. They do for breaking tackles. Like, my God, this dude, I believe, just had the single best season in PFF's database in terms of missed tackles forced per carry. But there really is an argument that Charbonnet, also a good running back in his own right, is, closer to Walker, actually just skill level. Again, a lot of these stats would say that, but it's like that one, funny comedian dude who do the TikToks about like working in a warehouse. What do your eyes say, guys? Mine say that Kenneth Walker is one of the most talented running backs in the NFL. He's getting an upgrade, with the Clint Kubiak wide zone. Again, we did see what he was able to do for Alvin Kamara in an offense in New Orleans that wasn't very good last season as well. So Alvin Kamara is certainly a good running back in his own right. But Kenneth Walker, man, to me, this could just be a situation where we look up in week 3, see him break a big run or two, and it's like, oh yeah, this is a feature back. We always know he's had the big playability. Why is he going next to these old dudes like Alvin Kamara and James Conner in a low-end RB2 range? So I'm actually surprised that Jake has him up here as high as he does, because I know, again, the dude currently with RB17 or something ADP. Jake and I lockstep on this one. Good job by you, Jake.
Yeah, Kenneth Walker
Good,
currently going as running back 15, pick number 43 overall. If you are looking for Ian's updated rankings, you can find those on fantasylife.com. You can do that for Jake at theathletic.com. Any promo codes, Jake, to throw out?
No.
Yeah, I want my $1 a month back.
No, because there you can just go do that. That's why, like, they don't do promo codes. You just click on it, and then it's like, hey, you're reading this article. Want to finish and get it? Here's $1 a month. I think it's pretty much ongoing at this point.
Jeanty and McCaffrey, and we can even throw Henry into this discussion as well. Although Genty's going as running back 5, McCaffrey has now moved up, Jake, to running back number 4, and Henry number 6 in terms of half-point ADP. Do you think, like, you just did one of these mock drafts, and mock drafts are different than real drafts because you can make picks for content. That's kind of the point about them. So you got to be a bit careful with those. But the overall ADP for McCaffrey right now is 11. I would guess he's going to start going higher than that.
I think he will as we get more positive. Hey, he looks good in camp. He looks 100%. Like, oh, what a shock when he wasn't running 100%. They're like, oh, look at McCaffrey. He's not running. Like, he doesn't look 100. The guy was jogging. Like, can we not focus on that clip as like whether or not Christian McCaffrey is 100%? The truth about him is, and to go back to my projections, is like I even went to 2 years ago and I said, I'm not going to give him that workload. I went to last year before he got hurt, which was the exact same on-pace workload he was coming off from the previous season. And I said, I'm still not going to go down that road. I'm going to give him about 90% because maybe at this point, 29, that we're getting to the point where even with Shanahan and everything, like they just pull off a little bit, say like, maybe we don't give him as much. Maybe Brock Purdy also doesn't check down or throw to the routes that he's running as much and turns to Pearsall or Kittle or whatever it might be. I'm just trying to bake in some risk is my point. And even so, 90% still put him as the highest projected running back because he's Christian McCaffrey. It's the 49ers, but associating the risk is why I would still put him on the next tier behind those big 3 we talked about earlier. But at the end of the first round, I would hammer all day. But your bigger question here is what I wanted to bring all that out to say is I still wouldn't take him as a top 5 or 6 running back, despite he's number 1 in my projections, because at that point, you're not associating some of the risk there. There is some risk that maybe he's not the Christian McCaffrey we've ever known, and he's not ever again. Maybe they do pull off even more because he's got injuries starting to pile up in his career. Just maybe. And that's why I would take him at the end of the first round. But middle to early first, I'm probably going to be out on him as much as it sounds like I'm a huge fan of his.
Yeah, you do have him ranked at number 4 at running back.
Yeah, but that also means the 9th, 10th, 11th pick in the first round. I have a lot of wide receivers that I would take.
Okay, so you're saying not top 5 overall. I thought you meant
Correct.
Top 5 at running back. And then I saw him
No.
4.
Overall, first round, yes.
It's like, way to play both sides on that.
I have him at 10th. I have 10th overall, 4th at running back.
Always going to come out on top.
Ian, what do you make of Jeanty? You have him at 7. Jake, you have him at number 9. He's being drafted as running back number 4. It just seems like too much too soon for me in order to burn that top 8 pick on Jeanty when McCaffrey's going after him.
Yeah, and it's just kind of a bet against this Raiders offense. And if you look at the yearly, Vegas implied point totals, I mean, the Raiders, despite some of the additions, still come in at just 27th in terms of expected, overall real life points per game. So again, Jeanty's awesome. Okay. We all saw him. We saw the yards at Boise State. He went 6 overall for a reason and everything. It's just, I'm not willing to completely make a bet and say he's more awesome than the Christian McCaffreys, the Derrick Henrys, the, Devon Achans of the world also going in this range. So again, it feels like, oh man, I have him, RB7. He should be going RB5. You complete dimwit. So, hey, if you want to just lean into the potential for 400 plus touches, that is tough to argue with. But it's not like every single top 10 running back just comes in and immediately starts smashing. I mean, Bijan Robinson finished as the RB17 in PPR points per game as a rookie. Christian McCaffrey was RB13. Yeah, even guys like Trent Richardson, who a lot of people think of as a bust, he was overall. As a rookie, though, he was still the RB5 on the back of 318 touches. So high floor for Jeanty. We still aren't exactly sure, though, how much usage he's going to get in the passing game. I'm not completely sold on Chip Kelly all of a sudden just being back to being one of the best offensive masterminds in the league. Congrats, Chip. As a Columbus, Ohio native, I'm so happy you helped us get that national championship. I don't think, leading that Ohio State offense to 30-plus points per game is something that only a few humans on the planet could do, though. So, again, just enough questions with the Raiders' overall offense is the only reason why I'm not a little bit higher on Jeanty.
All right, let's go to this back end of tier 2, tier 3, because I really think this is where it's going to be won or lost for a lot of people. So if we just simply go by the ADP and we take a look at it, after you get past Jonathan Taylor at 8, Bucky Irving at 9, Josh Jacobs at 10, we're now into Chase Brown, Kyron Williams, Breece Hall, James Cook, Kenneth Walker, who we've already spoken about, Alvin Kamara, stomp the yard Omarion up there as well. We'll let you catch it this time, Ian. Chuba Hubbard, Joe Mixon, James Conner. For me, I get the appeal of someone like Chase Brown and what he can do, and as the bell cow, what he was able to produce both through the passing game, on the ground, and getting, he's a full load type guy. He can take that load. It's not a problem for him. But Kyron is exactly the same way. It feels like every single year, Ian, we're looking for reasons not to draft Kyron Williams, and he just gets 25 touches a game.
Yeah, and I get it. His efficiency was really bad last year, and he also fumbled like 6 times. There really wasn't much good going on with Kyron Williams, but I just don't know that Sean McVay and the Rams are really looking into those kind of things. And yeah, they added Jarquez Hunter, and Jarquez Hunter is fine. I don't know if you guys heard, but every single rookie running back this year is actually incredible. Okay. That's what, the draft community would lead you to believe, because draft community never says anything bad about anyone, which is a nice world to live in. I get it. But unfortunately, we got to be the bad guys over here in the fantasy streets. So again, it's a situation where if they drafted Blake Corum last year, we literally heard all offseason McVay and Snead saying, we want a running back like Kyron to, help ease some of that load that Pat keeps going on about. So that didn't happen at all. All right. Kyron had one of the biggest workloads in the league, despite not being all that great with it. And now when you start reading between the lines a little bit, we've had Snead, McVay, and Kyron himself all say that they are pushing towards an extension, and they could see if something happens if the two sides can get together. So it's not imminent necessarily, but I do wonder if we do get word of a training camp, 4-year, $40 million extension, not making him the highest paid running back in the league, but at least lock him in as RB1. Is that going to be what it takes to really bring everyone back? Because again, for me, adding another day 3 running back isn't making me move off Kyron that much. They drafted a running back in 8 straight drafts. So again, maybe Hunter really is just that special, but I don't know, Jake. I'm assuming Kyron actually ranks pretty nice in the projections. He's been a top 5 running back over these past 2 years in an offense that just wants to hand him the ball inside the 5-yard line. So Kyron, again, I will admit, when I've gotten to round 4, I haven't been going out of my way to click on him. You got George Kittle there, some of those elite QB1s, but very tough guy to rank more than 12 or so running backs ahead of.
I like how Ian references my tweet, but doesn't give me any credit on that one. So to give Ian the 8 straight drafts that they drafted a day 2 or 3 running back. Good job. I'm saying that tongue in cheek because I want to give Ian credit. I thought he was going to bring up his own tweet, is the fact that in what he just said, he left out the fact that he put out something that talked up Blake Corum, but made it sound like it was talking about Jarquez Hunter. Good and tweet, that's buddy. The point. It was like, that's what we've been doing for McVay. People were excited about John Kelly a few years ago because we just keep getting excited about what might be. But I will say it's not mutually exclusive to say that we can talk positively about Kyron Williams, that we've done this before with the Rams and he should be fine, but also acknowledge the fact that You don't have to be a world-breaking running back in McVay's offense on this team to replace somebody and all of a sudden never look back. And that's what I say. I think that's the risk of why I have Kyren Williams at 11, because he's not the most efficient. He's not the best. He's a kind of a concern at times in the passing game. And if he has 2 or 3 bad games in a row and McVay says, all right, it's Corum's time, or all right, it's Hunter's time, and they look good for a game or two, we've gone down this road where he doesn't go back. It's happened to Akers and Darrell Henderson, and down the list, he's done it before. So that I think that's why people are so concerned, is because we know you don't have to be amazing to be good with McVay. That being said, Ian does bring up a really good point. If he gets a 4-year, $40 million contract, I think 2 or 3 bad games in a row would likely prevent them pulling the plug on that, just because they just gave him the contract. So I would feel better. I would move him up a spot or two, but with that contract situation still hanging out there and knowing McVay might just get frustrated and say goodbye, next guy's up, next guy looks just as good because it's the Rams offense. I think that's the slight concern of why we have him as a back end RB1.
Question for both of you. How old currently do you think Todd Gurley is?
Oh, man. 28, right?
31.
He's 30.
Oh, it's 30. Okay.
I shot over, though, so you won by Price is Right rules.
Yeah,
So.
Ian's the big victor in this. The other guy on this tier, 'cause, I mean, Chase Brown, I think he's properly ranked by both you guys, 13 and 12, is Chuba Hubbard, who I don't actually see that much of a difference in between Chase Brown and Chuba Hubbard, honestly.
I think it's
It
just
was one of the most.
outside.
It was one of the most inefficient running backs last year.
Yeah,
And,
he's going to be on the field. He's going to get all these touches. He's going to catch passes. They're going to give him the ball inside of the 5. Brooks is probably not
that's
going
the
to play
difference.
this year.
No, and you're not wrong about that. But the difference is we're talking volume reliant Chuba Hubbard, and I don't want to take anything away from him, because it's like I can be a Trevor Etienne fan, but still acknowledge I don't think Etienne's coming for his job. I don't think there's a lot back here. And I've actually downplayed Rico Dowdle a lot, because the Dallas Cowboys just had Dowdle do his thing and then said goodbye. We're not even going to offer you 1 year, 2.5, which is instead they're going to give $500,000 more to a player that we have questions about if his knee is even existing at this point. So just to tell you that the Cowboys were not enamored with Dowdle. So again, I'm not saying that Dowdle and Etienne are serious threats, but what if they are involved a little bit? The volume doesn't keep Chuba Hubbard into this range, where Chase Brown has proven to be very explosive, very good on a per touch. I think the concern with Brown is actually that they don't give him the bell cow work, that they do mix in a little bit more with the options that they have behind him now, both in bringing back Pirine and Zach Moss and now Taj Brooks, who's actually, I think, very much like Chase Brown. So I think the workload is more of a concern for Brown than it is for Hubbard, but I think that the effectiveness of the running backs is more of a concern for Hubbard.
Put it this way, Ian. I guess my problem here is that Chase Brown's going at number 29 overall. Chuba Hubbard's going at 53 overall. That's be that big of a gap.
Oh, 100%. Give me Chuba over that 8 days of the week. The Chase Brown breakout did not happen until Zach Moss was actively out of the picture. And I understand Zach Moss and Samaje Perine. Those are not, the sort of competition we should be overly worried about. But, man, Moss wasn't doing good last year. And, again, it did take for that to happen. So, yes, Chase Brown, when you give him 70 yards of open field, he is going to put up a borderline erotic next-gen stat speed. But I don't know, man. We also aren't exactly seeing great efficiency numbers out of him. In Chuba's case, we actually did get RB4 marks in terms of, rushing yards over expected per carry, and also Fantasy Life's utilization score. So for me, seeing Chuba got that $33 million, 4-year extension later in last season, Rico just on a 1-year deal worth less than $3 million. It can get up there a little bit more potentially, but I just think the volume for Chuba is going to be potentially in a different ballpark than Chase Brown. Maybe I should actually be ranking Chuba ahead of Chase Brown the more I get into this conversation. So again, Chase Brown, someone where I think by the end of week 1, like guys, if we could kind of have the fantasy genie and we could just find 1 or 2 things out about like week 1 usage rates, that Bengals backfield is one of those where we're either going to be looking at it and saying, oh, okay, it's the same role as the end of last year. Chase Brown's a top 5 freaking running back because he was playing 90% plus of the snaps. You just don't really see that outside of the CMC and Kyren Williams of the world. Or is Pirine coming back for his 2-minute drill job? Is Zach Moss going to get an annoying 10 touches a game, leaving Chase Brown more so as the RB3 that he was for the first half of last season?
There's also a collection of guys in this tier who are being drafted that I think you're really going to have to pick your poison with. Now, the answer for both you guys right now is Kenneth Walker. We've already talked about him, and if the reports are true and Jake's insider knows, then he's going to move up because people listen to Jake and people listen to insiders about these things. The guys that I'm primarily talking about, though, are Breece Hall, James Cook, and Alvin Kamara. I'll even throw Joe Mixon and James Conner onto that tier as well. Guys have been around now for a little while. What is it what am I missing, Jake, about Breece Hall? Why he's not going higher? Is it some sort of platoon concern? Because dude's playing for a contract right now.
Yeah. Also, like, this, if we've been around long enough that I've referenced before, I did the contract year myth and found out, like, guess what? Players perform 1/3 better, 1/3 worse, and 1/3 exactly the same. It was actually like 32%, 34 for one of them, or whatever it might be. And no, I didn't take every running back in the history of forever. I took running backs that. I took running backs that had some kind of production to base off of. I did the minimum of at least 50 touches and went through it. But anyway, point being is, like, contract year's a myth. Like, they're going to play. The thing, I don't think you're missing much. I don't think any of us are. If we knew Breece Hall was going to get 250 plus touches, like some of these other running backs we're talking about, he would be much higher in my rankings. I'm sure, I don't want to speak for him, but I'm sure Ian's going to agree. The question here is down to, we've now seen what is coming over from the Lions coaching staff, the new offensive coordinator. I don't want to try to mispronounce his last name, but if you look at it, what if, forget Isaiah Davis, who's also been talked up. And Isaiah Davis is a fine talent in his own right. But just what if they're the lesser version of the Lions with this backfield? And then you have David Montgomery is Braylon Allen, and then you have Jahmyr Gibbs is Breece Hall, but it's the lesser version because it's the Jets who are also playing alongside Justin Fields, the runner, who will run himself inside the 10-yard line and even inside the 5. But I bring up the Montgomery to Allen because you brought this up earlier. And what if Braylon Allen's getting all the goal line carries? And if you look back to Justin Fields, the running backs alongside of him, they've been pretty miserable. So I'm not even going down the road of, like, the chicken or the egg. Like, he doesn't throw to running backs, but does he? As is it the talent, whatever it might be. But the running backs that have had some fantasy success alongside of him have been more of the power running backs, because when they get to the goal line, at least in past experiences with the Bears and stuff, it was the bigger running back to offset Fields. And I think that's just, I'm not saying I know for sure. I'm just bringing all these things up to say that's why there's a lot of risk with Breece Hall of not knowing. And what if he's only in that 200 touch range? And all of a sudden we're talking about 800 rushing yards and 300 receiving. It's a fine season, but it's not anywhere close to being an RB1.
It'd be tough, Ian, if that ended up being the case. Only 200 touches. He had 266 last year in only 16 games. And he's now year 2 removed from the massive knee surgery. We've just seen this happen so often that we forget about how good someone is because the year that they come back, they're just not at 100%. He should be at 100% coming in here. And I think that very clearly looking at Isaiah Davis and Braylon Allen, he's so much better than those guys.
I am not a doctor, but I do wonder sometimes about he's an extra year removed. Those extra 250 plus touches he got against NFL defense. He's actually more healthy now that he's gone through that. So I don't know. I'd have to kind of run the numbers there, but that's the whole thing.
I would actually want to see that because
me too.
Because it basically just happened to Tony Pollard last year, didn't it?
That was, I mean, it worked out for Pollard well enough with it. So maybe Nick Chubb is now going to get back to being, the Nick Chubb of old as well. So again, I really don't know.
We're still waiting for Javonte Williams.
Right? Yeah,
maybe, but maybe he was never good to begin with.
Third year removed, Jake. That's really what we're waiting for with Javonte here. So with Breece, I mean, look, the talent was obviously there in 2022, was the RB8 in PPR points per game before he got injured there. 2023, a little bit more of a late season, like volume bump. I mean, he had like 40 touches in some of these, week 17 meaningless games. He got up to RB6 status, but was only the RB17 last year. And an offense that was featuring him ahead of Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis. So we really shouldn't have, I think, had as low as output as we did with the quarterback and Aaron Rodgers, who, didn't want to be getting thrown to the ground. So he was checking the ball down far more often than we would expect from Justin Fields. So just historically, and I have run the numbers on this, when you do have high end, just high volume, I should say, dual threat quarterbacks like Fields, they do increase the running back's efficiency in yards per carry. But again, it's what Jake mentioned, the lack of targets to the running back because they're scrambling instead of checking down. And then the reality that they factor into that equation around the goal line that, let's face it, we're not expecting a ton of excess volume there for the New York Jets offense this year. It ends up, again, not making up for an increase of, 0.2, 0.3 yards per carry. So maybe we do just see a healthier Breece and everything. But I think going in that RB15 range is pretty fair. And hey, if that's going to end up being, late round 3, early round 4 pick, I think that's actually, a nice price for Breece.
Yeah, he's pick number 34 overall right now. James Cook is going at pick number 42. Kamara at 47. Mixon down at 55. James Conner down at 58. What is it with those two, Ian? Mixon and Conner that is just everyone's had these guys on their teams already and are like, I'll take a rookie or something.
James Conner is turning into like the Tyler Lockett of running backs, just beating that ADP every single year. And yeah, Trey Benson, I've seen the Raz score, and he's got 3 down size. He's a perfectly fine handcuff, but that dude didn't touch the ball more than 5 times in a single game last year that wasn't decided by double-digit points. And like Chuba Hubbard, James Conner, David Montgomery's in there as well. All these guys got nice contract extensions down the stretch of last season, and I just don't see that role changing for no reason as we get into 2025. So unlike with someone like Fields and Josh Allen's of the world, Kyler Murray is a bit more like Lamar Jackson in terms of they aren't factoring into the rushing equation near the goal line. I think Kyler actually only had 1 single carry inside the 5-yard line last year. I don't know if you guys have heard, he's not the biggest guy in the world, so it kind of makes sense that they instead give the ball to their bulldozer James Conner when they're knocking on that goal line. So James Conner is someone I've been happy to draft at that range. Joe Mixon is someone that I will give Jake, some kudos for, because I have not been going near him. And I think that RB27 price tag that Jake's throwing out there, actually I should, take a deeper look at and consider dropping him as well, because when they did add Nick Chubb, just like the Broncos adding J.K. Dobbins, it's not that I think Chubb is going to snatch Mixon's job, but man, you talk about a guy that already wasn't exactly making the most out of his opportunities. Wasn't a great offensive line, but I don't know that their moves have exactly changed that reality either. I mean, Jake, it is a situation where I don't know that Mixon's going to be getting that same every down role that he's needed throughout his career to give us anything close to RB1 production.
Yeah, so what is,
and he's not healthy. Like that's the thing. He's in a boot as of today, as of when we're talking right now, still walking around. He's a question mark for week 1. It's a question mark of how healthy he'll be if he's back to 100%, when that's going to happen. What you just said, it's not just the fact that Nick Chubb, they drafted Woody Marks, which some people thought were really highly of, but it was very reminiscent of Joe Mixon stylistically, who was very reliant on volume over the past. Actually, most of Joe Mixon's career has been volume reliant, and it's even been more so of recent years. And it's like, it's not a bad thing if we knew he was going to get 270 touches again. Like, that's fine. Cool. You don't have to be the most efficient. But injury, they drafted Marks, and then they turned around and said, you know what? We have Marks, and it's fine that they realized that Dameon Pierce was a kind of a one-year wonder. But they doubled down and said, well, we're still signing Nick Chubb. That tells me they don't have a whole lot of faith in that Joe Mixon's going to be anywhere close to 100% to start the season, let alone if and when. And then if and when, there's the workload there. Probably not. It's probably not going to be anything close to what we've seen for Joe Mixon. So I'm just going to be out on him. I mean, like, I'll take split backfields from rookies at this point before I take Joe Mixon.
Once we start getting into the 20s in terms of your rankings, you have Trayvon Henderson, David Montgomery, RJ Harvey, Caleb Johnson. This is by ADP, by the way, not your rankings. Quinshon Judkins, DeAndre Swift, Aaron Jones-Senor, he's up there as well. Tony Pollard, Isaiah Pacheco, Jalen Warren, Brian Robinson, Tyrone Tracy. For me, Ian, looking at it, I like Pacheco. We went over that on the last show. And I actually kind of like DeAndre Swift. I never thought I would say that. But I just, if he's going to still be the guy in Chicago, feel like he should be a bit higher.
Well, it's this weird phenomenon where whenever you hear Bears fans or media talk about last year, it's like, oh man, how could Caleb Williams do anything behind that offensive line in this, antiquated Shane Waldron scheme? Shouldn't those two factors have impacted DeAndre Swift as well? Like, I thought we've gone over this. Running backs are more dependent on their entire offense and their teammates more so than pretty much any other position. So, yeah, I agree that DeAndre Swift doesn't have the best vision in the world, but it's one of these things that, you hear it for like Swift and Najee, and then we just never bring up vision for pretty much any other running back. We treat it as this binary, you either have it or you don't. When in reality, Swift is probably like a C, while most running backs are a B or a B plus there. So for me, that's not enough of a reason to completely fade the guy. When, to your point, Pat, they haven't added anyone. They've added a seventh rounder running back from Rutgers, who's awesome. Okay, guy should have been a first rounder if you listen to the draft community. So I get that, but Roschon Johnson just was the worst running back in the league in yards per carry last season. I feel better about a running back like Swift's efficiency kind of being in the tank when every other running back on his team is also experiencing the same problems. So Swift, RB24 or better every single season of his career. There's this idea that Ben Johnson was the one that kicked him to the curb in Detroit. I've never been in an NFL front office, hand up, but I'm kind of wondering why first-year offensive coordinator Ben Johnson was completely in charge of the team's personnel moves. And even if he was, is there really any harm in preferring Jahmyr Gibbs to DeAndre Swift? Was there any harm in the Eagles preferring Saquon Barkley to DeAndre Swift? I do not think so. So, end of the day, again, just from a pure volume play and what we're seeing in projections, I think Swift makes a lot of sense. In a Bears offense, we expect to get better. God forbid he starts to look more like that explosive pass-catching talent that we saw put a top 15 finish on paper in a mid-Lions offense at that point with Ben Johnson. DeAndre Swift, man, someone that was going in the RB 30s earlier in the offseason. I've kept drafting him in this range, really right alongside Isaiah Pacheco the whole way.
The player you guys are in this range, at least, most off on in terms of your rankings. Jake, you have Henderson ranked at number 19. And Ian, you have him at number 26. That's a pretty sizable gap when we're talking about the back end, who your running back number 2 is going to be. Jake, you feel like he's firmly a number 2. Ian, you have him just outside of that. What is it about Henderson, Jake, that you actually believe in this year, that not only is this his job, but it's going to work out with the Patriots with their lack of actual good players?
Well, so I actually think you're going to be on my side because it's going to speak to your heart at the end. I'm going to save the player's name that I'm going to compare him to, but really it comes down to it doesn't need to be his entire job. One thing, looking at the Patriots, similar to what we talk about with some of these teams, they told us everything in the world that they're sick of Ramondre Stevenson. They gave a start to Antonio Gibson last year. This is done. This experiment is not working. And I don't mean that Stevenson's just going to go away and fade into existence, but he's going to not be the lead. And even if it's a 50-50 split, and this is where I was going for it with Pat, is Travion Henderson is so freaking explosive. He's also amazing in the passing game. I don't know if you've heard, but he's really good at pass blocking because that's all anybody can talk about. But there's a reason they're doing it. It's because they're talking about the Patriots offense, which, by the way, Josh McDaniels, the last running back, Pat, to finish as an RB1 in PPR with not getting 210 touches, James White in the Josh McDaniels offense on the Patriots. Now, of course, different quarterback and situation, but I just bring that up to say is this is the Patriots going back to what they do with McDaniels and knowing what works. And Stevenson hasn't worked. Gibson hasn't worked. The rest of this backfield hasn't worked. I don't need Henderson to get 250 touches. I don't have him getting 250 touches, but I think in the usage that he's going to get, and if everybody's so positive about Drake May being the breakout quarterback of breakout quarterbacks this year, and this offense is going to be so much better, and they're still looking for pass catching options, whether or not Diggs is healthy, Kyle Williams can step up as a rookie. I know a lot of passes are going to be going Henderson's way, and that's really what it comes down to as well.
So why are you down, Ian, so much? I mean, not even down. But down
why do you hate him?
I know. I'm so lame. I've watched this dude the last 4 years for the Buckeyes do everything right. It just comes down to more so me being old enough to remember that these Patriots backfields, when they're led by Josh McDaniels, rarely actually come looking the way that we, anticipated. So unlike Jake, I do expect Ramondre Stevenson on the back of that $36 million deal that the Patriots gave him last year will continue to be heavily involved. And yes, I do agree. We don't necessarily need more than 180, 200 carries if it is going to come alongside, 50, 60 targets. But man, I just do think there's an outside chance that we see McDaniels dip into his multi-running back bag and we see another guy, Antonio Gibson, involved potentially, just enough to shrink the opportunities for Henderson. So again, when I am,
let me ask you this.
Sure.
I have Henderson 220 touches and Stevenson 140. Is that too big of a gap in your opinion? I think that's proper, obviously, because that's coming from me. But that, I want to ask if you think that's a fair split, or you think it should be closer.
I think it's a reasonable split. I'm just wondering how far that split's actually going to go in an offense that we still don't exactly expect to be good. Yeah, they'll be improved because they have nowhere else to go down. They can't be worse, you know what I'm saying? So also Drake May, one of the more, prolific scramblers last year. I don't think we're going to be getting the same heavy check down stuff that we were getting from old man TB12 in those Patriots offenses. So look, Henderson, again, I could be wrong on this one, but when I just start looking at the guys around him, even the other rookies, Quinshon Judkins, Caleb Johnson, RJ Harvey, I just think their touch ceilings are quite a bit higher than Henderson. And similar to Jeanty, I'm just not going to go out of my way to try to purely trust a talent when I think a lot of these guys, how many freaking running backs in the NFL, if you gave them a 3-down role, could actually put forward RB1 numbers? 90? Zonovan Knight was a thing. This happens every year.
It's a lot like I remember watching the Raptors in the early 2000s, and Mike James just ended up being their only player who was left. And he may have taken 40 field goals a game. It's man, he's so good. He averages 24 points a game. It's yeah, he's the only guy on the floor shooting, and the team lost every single game. So yes, for fantasy, volume in that fact does matter. And that brings me to my next guy, who you guys both have ranked just outside the top 20. It's Aaron Jones. They trade for Jordan Mason. I'd be really worried about this.
I am really worried about this. I'll let Ian speak because I don't want to talk too much about our upcoming show with the sleepers. So there you go.
I should probably have Jones down a couple of spots, RB23, just given that he's actually going a few spots later, or at least in some of these early drafts. Maybe a bit aggressive on my part, but I do think it's funny where we have Mason coming in and we've seen the reports and heard it really from, Kevin O'Connell himself that Mason's going to be more so leaned on in short yardage and goal line. Surely he must have been really good in these situations last year. He was 1 for 7 on touchdowns and on carries inside the 5-yard line. Aaron Jones was also very bad. Poor Vikings fans, because Madison was just horrendous before Aaron Jones got there as well. So I don't know, man. It was a situation where, sure, Mason looked very good in the first 8 weeks with the 49ers, but running back hasn't looked good in that Shanahan scheme for the better part of the last 2 decades. So yes, Mason got, a decent deal with the Vikings. I think he is going to be involved, but look at the numbers Aaron Jones just got when he re-upped. They are bigger for a reason. Normally we do want to prioritize the more explosive option. He's going to be catching passes. I do think that, especially in full PPR, Jones still deserves that, nod. But hey, Mason's someone where, again, when we are trying to look more so in that RB3 tier, there could be some pure handcuffs. The Tyler Algiers, Trey Bensons of the world, where you have no shot standalone value, especially if JJ McCarthy can be as good as, that draft capital says he is, and, how much KOC has gotten out of his quarterbacks in general. Mason could be this rare guy where, yeah, you actually can use him as a flex because he's going to find his way into the end zone every so often, and then high handcuff upside, God forbid anything happens to Aaron.
If you were to rank the best handcuffs right now, Jake, that you want to target later in drafts, and we always talk about, listen, you don't need to handcuff your own guy. In fact, that probably limits your upside. If you can just walk yourself into a handcuff of someone else, it screws over your opponent and gives you more fantasy boom in the back end of your lineup and just more options that you have to go through. Who would you be drafting right now at the back end of drafts? I know Mason's not going there. Mason's going at pick like 106. He seems to be the highest of the guys on that list because we talk about a situation like Judkins and Warren. Like, it could be either one of those two. So if you end up drafting the guy going later, which is right now Jalen Warren, you might get a capable low-end running back too, maybe. Or it goes completely off the wall and it works out as a guy who gets 4 points a game. But in this situation, you're not expecting Mason to get anything. Are there other running backs like that you're looking back? I know that Ian just listed off a few of them. Who would be at the top of your priority list?
Yeah, Jordan Mason would probably be one of the biggest. I'm going back in on Trey Benson. There was a reason we were excited for him last year. James Conner, we talked about earlier, but James Conner strangely just had one of his healthiest seasons in a long time and still doesn't play a full season. So I think that's why we have to consider that. I think Ray Davis for the Bills because of the offense, but also what we saw Ray Davis do at brief times last year. If anything were to happen to James Cook, I'm willing to give Jalen Wright one more chance. Yeah. And I'll save that for the sleeper show, hinting out that show quite a bit. I think Nick Chubb falls into this unless Joe Mixon is not even necessarily out there for week 1. Then I know there's an obvious one. I'm scrolling down like
Tajay Spears.
Oh, I was going to say Garendo is the answer, isn't it?
Yeah, him too.
No, Tyler Algier.
Yeah.
Like, we've already seen Algier. Like, I don't think Algier's anywhere in the world of Bijan's talent, but we just saw him pre-Bijan put up fringe RB1 numbers. And like, if anything were to happen to Bijan, we're just forgetting that Algier, and we're talking volume reliant. Ian, you threw that out earlier saying how many running backs with volume could be an RB1, 90%. We've already seen Algier do this. And yet Algier is going like round 12-ish, somewhere around there. Like, are we just forgetting about him and that like all of a sudden Bijan's just invulnerable? He's never going to get hurt.
No, I hear you. Algier's a great call. It is one of those situations though where Bijan plays 17 games. I mean, we're gonna get 0.
It's a non-factor, but yeah, that's not why you're drafting. But I'll save it for the sleeper show, Pat. I was gonna say I'll push back on one thing about the Jordan Mason not being valuable at all. I do think there can be some.
Last point, though, again, going off of the Jordan Mason, Ramondre Stevenson, Najee Harris, these are guys where I wouldn't exactly call it like David Montgomery, even if he is the RB2. It's weird calling him a handcuff because they do both some semblance of standalone value. But just like Jahmyr Gibbs, guys, if Montgomery goes down, Jahmyr Gibbs is going to go to the moon. David Montgomery would be a consistent top 10, if not top 5 running back if something happened to Gibbs either. I also think that applies to Ramondre Stevenson, to, yes, Najee Harris, and Jordan Mason.
There's Charbonnet, too.
Charbonnet too. So the last guy I would say that I think does actually have a good chance for standalone value in addition to sky high handcuff upside, Tajay Spears, someone where in Tennessee we saw them talking about wanting to do this 1A, 1B, 50-50 with him and Pollard throughout most of last season. Unfortunately, multiple concussions. We had an ankle, a hamstring thrown in there for Spears and just couldn't really get going. When he did, though, was the fantasy playoffs, and we actually saw him work as the RB5 overall in PPR points during that, weeks 15 through 17 stretch. So Pollard had a game where he had a snap rate north of 90% in the season. Spears, even though he got concussed in the third quarter of a game, was already at like a 63% snap rate. So again, evidence from the coaching staff that they are willing to leave either running back on the field for pretty much the entire game when it comes down to it. Tajay Spears really going alongside more so the Tyler Algiers of the world where, yeah, if Bijan goes down and Pollard goes down, sure, give me Tyler Algier, but I think we could actually get more out of Spears. Maybe, guys, he could be something close to this year's version of Chase Brown.
Can I ask Ian a question?
Oh, yeah.
I'll allow it.
The floor is yours.
Since you brought up the Titans, where are you on Tony Pollard? Because I keep pushing back and I just don't have a lot of love for Pollard this year. And everybody's like, well, look at before he got hurt. And I was like, well, before he got hurt, he was RB 18. If you're telling me that's his ceiling on all his volume, then why am I Cam Ward, everything's going to be great. New offense, new offensive line, new quarterback. Everything's all of a sudden, this is going to be a top 10 offense in the league. I'm fine with Tony Pollard, but there's just no way I'm getting inside my top 25. And I feel like I'm taking crazy pills because everybody comes for me every time I say that, Ian.
Well, I can answer this one for you. You both have him ranked exactly the same at 31.
Okay, well, there we go.
There we go. Look, he
Simple
did get
enough.
back to playing better. He was actually 6th in yards after contact per carry after, really falling off in 2023. But his numbers were pretty much, accounting-wise, identical from the 2023 Cowboys to 2024 Titans. The ADP was just a lot more affordable, so people felt a lot better about what he did. But I'm just saying, to have Spears that banged up throughout the season, we're still not exactly expecting Ward and company to be lighting up the scoreboard each and every week. Pollard was only the RB22 last season. I mean, that was sandwiched between DeAndre Swift and Rashad White. I feel like people aren't exactly lining up to draft those dudes again. So again, for Pollard to run as pure as he did with Spears out last year, we got his newfound efficiency and stuff. Not a given that's going to keep. And only to give us RB22 production, man, I'm not really signing up for that.
If you had to draft a Cowboys running back, Jake, who would it be?
Javonte Williams, because he's not costing you much to do it. We saw pre-injury Javonte Williams. We were coming off that whole experience before he got hurt. Everybody's like, "Oh my God, we could be talking about a top 15, top 10 running back in the NFL." Let's not forget how good he is as a receiver too. This is an all-around running back. Has he looked anything like that since? No. That's why Ian made the joke before. 3rd year removed from the injury, but they took the gamble on him. And it's more so to say that look behind him. I mean, I was one of the higher people on Jaden Blue, but I still acknowledge that Jaden Blue, similar to Bashal Tutin, is a timeshare piece. I don't think he's the vast majority lead of the backfield. I know he got a decent amount of touches last year, but I just don't think that's who he is in the NFL. I think maybe as a Jalen Warren, which you would say in that situation, okay, I want the more explosive player. And that's why I bring up Blue. I think Blue is a fine pick too. You could take both of them because they're not costing you much to do either. And you could go both pieces of the backfield. The backfield piece that I wouldn't want is Miles Sanders, but I'll take a gamble on Javonte Williams because unlike last year with the hope that, Sean Payton and the offense and everything's going to fix him and it's going to be better. Now he's going as a mid to late RB3, and that's okay for me. But like I said, I would also dip my toe in with Blue, and hopefully one of the two takes over because of the explosiveness of Blue's game.
Ian, what are you doing with the Giants backfield?
I've been leaning towards Tyrone Tracy. Just, again, I know Scatterbo wasn't that deep into the 4th round, but these day 3 running backs were always like, who's going to be this year's Bucky Irving or Jordan Howard? And then a lot of times it isn't this year. It's more like this, 3-year stretches guy. So not trying to overly bet on those exceptions. And with Tracy, man, I know he did have some ball security issues, but if you are going to give anyone slack for something like that, it would be a guy who is still learning the position. So leaning Tracy, he and Scatterbo go very close to each other. I've been okay mixing both guys in. I think honestly, like the Cowboys, the Giants, the Jaguars, I might be missing another one or two, but these are the situations where the only reason why they are priced so far down is because of the uncertainty around them. So really just trying to throw darts at this situation. I am okay taking on some Miles Sanders because he's by far the cheapest option in there. Talking about some of the Jaguars guys too, where again, like when you're looking at that point in the draft, all of a sudden it's like these running backs who could theoretically rise up the depth chart going up against, the QB 15s, the tight end, 18s, wide receivers ranked outside the top 60. Give me these running backs who, man, you can cut them if they're going to be nothing, or God forbid some injury happens, all of a sudden they're on the cover of the next week's waiver wire article.
Well, if you want to catch the updated running back rankings, and you can do that any time that you want at theathletic.com for Jake's at fantasylife.com for Ian's, and I'll have mine released in the Mayo Media newsletter, which you can sign up for free down in the description. Highly recommend that you do that. Smash a like to this episode and sub to Mayo Media Network. We have sleepers coming out next week, and then we're going to have wide receiver rankings, tight end rankings, QB rankings, and then of the overall rankings. We'll have the injuries updated for you the entire time. We're getting back full-fledged into football in about 2 weeks, but we got these sample shows coming out for you right now. So stick around with us, and I will see you next time.
That Mayo experience. Experience.